All right, we've achieved liftoff. Friday, June 16th, Portland, Oregon. Oh, excuse me. Echo. Is that you, Luke? How you doing, man? I think we have Luke Ford here. The August. One and only. Hi. I'm going directly to the comments. Art Bell's here. Said something about a 6/11 conspiracy. I have to confess I know nothing about the 6/11 conspiracy theory. Something was supposed to go down here. Didn't come off, and Art Bell says somebody, IPR, is really disappointed and is backtracking. And yeah, you know. You don't do the... Maybe Luke Ford could tell us about this, because he seemed like he could understand this sort of thing. But should a cult even do sort of doomsday predictions? You shouldn't do that, right? And you have to then, when the world doesn't end, obviously, you have to make up another story. And people do it. They've strung out for years, some cults, I think. You know, and you could argue that some major religions have done that. Yeah. Blessings and Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, I was going to say it's Saturday, but it's Friday. I forgot. KMG, we were going to talk to him a couple of days ago, was it? Wednesday. I want to do Wednesday shows, at least Wednesdays, 1 or 2. Coming on, do quick live streams. And it would be nice to come on and do an hour and then talk to somebody. Or just talk to people. Nobody wants to sit and listen to my crap for an hour. You know, it's like a Salvation Army where you gotta listen to the sermon and then you get your bowl of soup. But KMG did not show some problem with the technology, apparently. You know. Yeah. Anyway. Oswald Spengler thinks KMG is a James Joyce character incarnate. Yeah, I don't know my Joyce. I never got through Ulysses. You know? So, I didn't know what happened, though I know, as I understand it, nothing happens. All right. So, you know, why not just start with the good news? There's, you know, you've been hearing, obviously, about the pullback. I went and visited my local Targets to see how woke they are. Yeah, I'm in Portland, and I'm, you know, it's hard to tell. There's no real pushback in Portland against it. But the corporate entities, like Target, their pride displays were very muted here. I forgot to go and look for the tuckable swimwear. You know, I should have checked on that too when I went. I went explicitly to take pictures and, you know, tell you guys about it. And I should have checked on that tuck-friendly swimwear thing. Also because I could use some, right? But I didn't. But anyway, the point is they're really muted. And there's this small Target downtown Portland. It's not a real Target. It's in downtown, so it's like a quarter size of a Target. It's just a small grocery and a closed clothing store. But I've always known it to be very gay. downtown Portland. I went there, and there was no pride display, and even the background aesthetic was muted. It's always a little gay. They live downtown. Yeah, maybe Luke should come on and chat. Yeah. Missed you, Luke. Missed all the crazy people around Luke. There was a time where Luke was like the old Howard Stern show back when it was good. He had this constellation of characters swirling around him like his own whack pack, and also interesting people. And just anybody might turn up in the Luke Ford space. That was great. God bless you, Luke, for what you did and for letting me hang out for a while there. Yeah. No, let's get KMG in here. You guys are talking about him. I won't say anything until we get him in here. I think he just doesn't like to do things in a casual manner like I do it. I can't be a pro. Obviously I'm not, for one thing, but I can't really be organized about this and be too professional. This is very, very casual. And so if you come in here, it's casual. But don't worry, it's not going to, you're not going to make yourself look bad. You've probably already seen this. Look at this kid. It's almost like he's giving a Hitler salute. So some kids were doing a pride thing, and some other kids came along at a Catholic school. Okay. And it took a hostile turn, according to Global Toronto, another Canadian source.
But messages like this were quickly drowned out by the noise of a rowdy crowd. Students tearing through pride posters and dancing on pride flags.
Oh, dancing.
They're throwing water everywhere. They're looking at us. They're judging us. Don't be like that. You're out for a reason.
Rambunctious teens then
This poor kid.
throwing pride bracelets and other random objects on the
Random
road
objects?
and at people.
Some kid threw something
At?
at my head, and then in response to that, everyone started cheering. There was like a group of guys, and they were more like harassing.
They looked like they had COVID, but I have my mask.
Messages
All right.
like this were quickly drowned.
Yeah, okay. So, these small things. There are small things happening. Back in my own backyard, Huntington Beach, which has always been suspect among the good and right-thinking people, Huntington Beach has always had this potential white right-wing aspect to it. The MMA fighter, the old-school MMA fighter, what was his name? Tank Abbott came from Huntington Beach. So here's some kids in a Huntington Beach math class, and the teacher, I guess, didn't give them a trigger warning, didn't say what was coming.
Wow, Miss Clark. Wow. Why are you showing this to kids?
Why are you showing this to kids?
Hey, I'll warn you guys now, if you're going to be inappropriate, I will have supervision down and give all of you a Saturday school for next year. So knock it off.
Okay.
That's the start. Stop. Yeah, anyway, so there's some hope. There is some slight hope there. That not only are we seeing this pullback with the corporate world, at least, perhaps there's finally, I've always kind of thought go woke, go broke really wasn't actually in action yet, and frankly they can endure losing Bud Light maybe. They've been leaving money on the table for woke stuff. That's what I always say about that go woke, go broke. But maybe this now. This pretty obvious at this point. Pullback and easing up on the woke stuff is evidence they are at least looking at the bottom line and saying, let's try not to alienate them. We have the problem of the inelastic goods, the necessary goods. Not everything you can choose to boycott at the end of the day. Somebody had the idea that people on whatever, dissenters like us, should pick a month like June, the proudest month, and just boycott that month. Make that month a month that you don't go out to restaurants, you don't go to theaters, you don't do any of that stuff. You don't spend any sort of disposable income during that 1 month in a sort of holiday from the madness. Dennis will rid Portland from the mammon once and for all, you say. I will. I promise to endeavor to try. Yeah. All right. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong screen. Okay, so let me quickly... What was the subject matter of today's stream? What were you going to talk about, Dennis? Well, we've got homeless fires everywhere, of course. I want to talk about that, but first I want to talk about something, because I talked about this on the last broadcast. Oregon is passing a bill, and Luke's here. We should just bring Luke in here. California, they're proposing a bill in California that will take parental consent away from parents regarding transgender. Is this true, Luke? Regarding transgender care. And we basically are going to pass a bill here now that the Republicans have ended their walkout in opposition to this insane reproductive rights / gender-affirming care bill that will require insurers to cover all manner of quote-unquote gender-affirming care, including that which would be considered cosmetic, I guess, if you're straight, or if you're doing it for any other reason. So, yeah, including tracheal shaves and to change your voice and, facial feminization surgery, whatever. Insurers have to cover it. And there won't be, minors will not need parental consent to get transgender affirming care, puberty blockers, surgery. The law was going to let any minor of any age get an abortion without any parental consent considered. That's the compromise the Republicans won, I suppose. And they're going to come back, and this bill's going to get voted in. But their compromise is that, okay, if you're under 15, we'll require parental consent. And so we've got California's actually behind us in the rush to transgender fucking hell. Here's what they want. Crucially, that would include softening language in the bill that currently ensures a child of any age can receive an abortion without parental consent. The provision has been a central sticking point. Rather than doing away with the requirement that parents be notified in order for a child under 15 to end a pregnancy, new language would potentially allow a healthcare provider to override such a requirement in case... Anyway, they're writing it, so they might still have a backdoor to do this. Oh, everybody's bailing. All right. And they also got a gun bill. They managed to shoot down a gun bill that would have been pretty heavy duty. So, they got what they wanted, I guess, on guns. and they gave up the farm pretty much regarding this crazy reproductive health care bill. Yeah. All right. I'm going to do something. I'm going to send out an invite. I think I can do this. Copy link. Look to your Twitter. Mr. Ferd, if you're still out there. Look to your Twitter, Mr. Ford. I'm going to write a song. Messages. I do want to just a moment. All right. Well, I've got this damned backup keyboard. There we go. There's a link sent. Should you want to come on and chat. Art Bell says, Tucker Tuckables. Lionel Nation says, Tucker's a forgotten loser. He will wither away on Twitter. I didn't know about the Twitter platform. It needs to be something else, man. I could be live streaming this directly to Twitter right now, too. I don't do it. I don't know why. Might as well. But I don't know if anybody sees it there. But it's not, it doesn't feel right. The Tucker Carlson, I watch a little. But frankly, I'm not watching Tucker anymore. It's interesting what's happening to him. God bless him and everything. But he has nothing to teach me, It's like Matt Walsh with his, what is a woman doctor? He's doing the Lord's work there, but he has nothing to teach me, So I want to look to, to the sages or just to get down in the weeds myself and research some subject and then blog post on it or talk about it rather than, that. I look to the wisdom of a Luke Ford, a guy who's been around the block, but is nonetheless chaste and, lives a monkish existence. Yeah. Now, Art Bell says, Lionel, who's Lionel the Nation? I don't know who people are. That's one problem. Art Bell. I mean, I don't know who Lionel. I'm picturing the old guy. I think I know who you're talking about. On an old man tear, he says, 10 short videos a day plus 2 10-minute videos plus 2 1-hour. I could do that. I could do that if I didn't have to, do other stuff. He's still losing subscribers. Yeah, I don't know what you've got to do to get off the ground here. What does one have to do? I think for me, it would be, I would have to bring people in here. If this channel could grow at all, I would have to talk to people. Must talk to others. Fox Day Respecter shall be remembered, says Luciani. What happened to him? Did he get in a motorcycle accident or something? I hope he didn't actually. That would be really bad if I made that joke. All right. We'll talk about that too. Yeah. Anyway, we went through the bill in depth here before. And one of the things is that if a kid runs away and becomes a ward of the court, it's over for parents. That's the law in Washington now, I think, and then we followed. California's still lagging behind us and getting on the right side of history here. But yeah, if you show up at if you're a minor, you show up at a shelter, And you say my parents don't approve of my transgender stuff. You know, they don't reveal it. And at the same time, you're eligible for taxpayer-funded treatment. It's insane. You know, and I was looking up minor consent for abortion, just for abortion, not even started on the gender stuff. And there's like 4 states, we're the two, Washington and Oregon are the 2 most liberal. Most states require some parental consent. But there are like 4 that don't. Washington, us, and a couple others, I think, on the East Coast, Eastern Seaboard. Yeah. And they make the insurers pay for everything. A carrier may not exclude as a cosmetic service a medically necessary procedure. Medically necessary. And that's the thing with, quote, gender-affirming care, unquote, is, okay, if it's all about affirming gender against the reality, frankly against the will of the body, which is growing its own, doing its own growing and aging process, right? But if that's, then where does it stop? It stops nowhere. In fact, you could get carried away and think, what about species-affirming care? Are we headed there, I mean, I know it sounds stupid, like a hokey joke, but are we headed for species-affirming care? I mean, that horn, it's not a unicorn horn. I'm looking for something, frankly, more phallic and scary. But whatever it is, whatever it's called, that's there. I need to affirm it with surgery, or I may commit suicide in my despair. Yeah. So again, that's a gender-affirming treatment means. Here they list it: tracheal shave, hair electrolysis, facial feminization surgery. That's what Dylan got. Revisions to prior forms of gender-affirming treatment. That means complications. You're going to pay for that. We fucked up this one. We don't care. You're going to pay for the secondary surgeries. And there's, so what is going on here? What are we watching? And, aside from the madness, we're watching a corrupt industry, the medical industry, take advantage of these kids and growing this new business, in part because there's going to be so many of those revisions to prior forms of surgery. Yeah, there's at least a 2-year care period, probably far beyond that. And then there's the fucking catastrophic fuck-ups, which they are still there to collect. It's the same logic culturally, the same cultural revolution that's... Oh, excuse me. Just a moment, I'll answer that. I was just going to say, the same cultural revolution that's driven these kids crazy is awaiting them at the other end to collect them here as the so-called medical community, to collect them and fuck them up all over again. All right, so is this a call on my phone or? I think this is. Why am I not seeing it? Excuse me, Luke. I think you're trying to call. Here we go. You're in the green room. 5, 4, 3. All right, bringing you in, my man. I think. There you are. Hi, welcome. Good to see you.
Dennis. What's going on, bro?
Not much. I'm trying to put us side by side on my screen. Excuse me. I think we're there. No, I'm blacked out. Anyway. Oh, there I am. Hey, man. Looking good. How are you?
Thank you. Side by side on your computer screen board.
Yeah.
Ebony and ivory.
What are you drinking there? It's quite a dose.
So good. It's a blueberry smoothie. So it's frozen blueberries, some chocolate almond milk, and some
Ah,
vanilla protein powder.
sounds awesome. Yeah, I've been thinking I need to get into smoothies for the trying to eat better.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know how healthy it is, but it's so good.
How
It
are
makes me happy.
how are things in LA?
Oh, pretty good because like I focus on what's good. So I mean, there are homeless, there's crime, drugs, all sorts of problems. But I mainly live in and around Beverly Hills. Life is pretty good, so I just focus on what's good. So there are problems, but I walk the streets of LA, Beverly Hills for an hour and a half every day, and very pleasant. Almost everyone I interact with is quite pleasant. So
Your
I
neighborhood
think,
is resilient, isn't it? It's always been a great place where you're at.
yeah, I think that's part of it. But frankly, I think I'm resilient. So I just choose to focus on what's good. Wherever I am. Like if I were, I'm not really on board with the transgender movement, but if I were working with transgender people, I try to make the best of it. I want to get along with everybody to the best extent possible. So
Yeah, that's great. So you're
there,
telling me
hey,
none of
there we
your
go.
yeah
I see you now.
yeah scary. Uh, so you're telling me none of your doomer crap, Dennis. Dennis is trying to bait me into talking about how screwed up things are.
Let me just challenge you to make the show interesting.
Don't do that.
And let me just give you this fundamental challenge. Dennis, this is just something I pick up, and I could be completely wrong. But whenever like things are going to hell, um, you seem to have a psychology that your first impulse is we're doomed, and then you'll try to talk yourself out of it and go, well, maybe there is some hope. But no matter what's happening, like if it's bad, it seems like that's just my outside perspective. Tell me I'm completely wrong, but there seems to be an impulse in you that very quickly goes to we're doomed. What do you think? Am I off base? Is there something to it?
No, there's something to it. I'm a fatalist, somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But I don't say like now. I'm not a believer like in a crash. I think that what I don't like is the idea that where we're going is going to keep in this trend, and not that things are going to fall apart as much as they're just going to keep going as they are. But that's my fatalist side. I'll say, but yeah, I'm guilty of that, definitely.
Now, what's your genetic heritage?
German and Dutch, Catholic on the German side, yeah.
Okay, so I don't think that's necessarily. I mean, I'm not the world's expert on German and Dutch. I don't think that's necessarily. Is that something rooted in your childhood? So, for example, I've also had that impulse. Like when people saw me at age 5, they thought I looked and sounded like a Holocaust survivor. Like at age 5,
What?
age 6, age 7, like I was that angry and weird and alienated from everyone. And I just remember for vast swaths of my life, my attitude was just basically, effort, there's no hope. So for decades, I had that impulse, and I still have it.
I
It
don't
still
see
comes
that.
up for me.
I don't
It
see
still
that
comes
in
up for me
you.
with technology. Like sometimes when I struggle with technology, I'm just like, effort. There's just no point, no hope. So I think I can talk about this. I think I can talk about what I observe in you because it resonates with me. It's just that in different situations it's stronger with me than in other situations. So, like if
Yeah.
I have money in the bank, I'm less susceptible to this because if I have a technology problem, I'll hire someone, or I'll buy new technology. But when I don't have money in the bank, And then I have technology problems or car problems or roommate problems or community problems or girlfriend problems. That hopeless thing just comes out. But let me move it away from like Dennis Dale the person. Let me move it towards the right wing distant sphere. This impulse of we're doomed seems to be probably the most resonant psychological impulse of which I'm aware on the right wing to right wing dissident sphere of people who talk on YouTube and podcasts. What do you think?
I don't know. It's a powerful part of it. I mean, I don't know if it's fully the most of it, in that a big part of it must be seen as, frankly, as a reaction to losing, a reaction to, the continuing. We're just getting battered culturally. And I've always said it's only natural. It's crazy that we think we what do we expect especially from young men who feel like they're being left out entirely. Some anger is appropriate, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It's there's too much doomerism, but of course it might be inaccurate. Thing too.
It might be fully accurate, but I think what's going on here is okay. Most people who have the time to do what you and I are doing right now, let's be honest, most people in our position are socially losers, right? Most people have the time,
yeah,
the inclination, and the drive and the desire to spend hours online, critiquing society and bewailing what's going on. Most of us are losers. And so I think what's going on here is that if I'm right, that most of us who are doing what we're doing now are socially losers, that's because we become wired to being addicted to losing. And so we see everything, we experience everything through the prism of losing.
Right.
And it would be incredibly uncomfortable for us to do too much winning. We couldn't handle it. And that's why none of us in the right-wing distant sphere can stay together very long. Like, I don't know, what are right-wing, YouTubers or podcasters who can work together for very long? We all split apart, fairly quickly. And I think it's because we have an addiction to losing. And I'm not exempting myself from this. This applies to me. I'm a 57-year-old bachelor who's never reproduced. I think we've got an addiction to losing, and so we interpret everything to meet this need. Like, I remember the most painful events of my life are when I am rejected, like when I am pushed away from a relationship or a community. And so I have found ways to re-experience rejection over and over and over again. I put myself in those places to experience that again. So, talking on YouTube is a great way to create more and more rejection in your life. Because, let's be honest, most people who do what we're doing damage our lives by doing this. Like, usually we create far more trouble for ourselves than like positive opportunities. And so I got hooked into recreating rejection. I just felt some necessity to join communities that would reject me and to just recreate the dynamic of being excluded and rejected over and over again. My therapist said if I wrote a memoir, I should call it The Uninvited. And so I think most of us who do what we're doing right now, I think we're addicted to losing. It's wired into us. We didn't choose it, so there's no self-blame here. Like, I'm not blaming anyone who's in this state, and I'm not blaming myself. But I think we're wired to lose. And so we interpret everything through a framework of losing. And we need that we always need to lose because there's a payoff for us. Oh, the payoff is that we get to escape, I guess, responsibility and being reasonable and responsible. So I'm just coming to you off the top of my head. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, you mean if you've been losing for a long time, you might get afraid of winning because you don't know how. You actually take some solace in losing because I think you said in there it relieves you of responsibility. Maybe there's a romance to it, to the losing. It's a cope in that sense. But something you said, I forgot that I wanted to talk about. But anyway, my biggest fear, listening to you talk about how none of us can work together over here, makes me worry that forget the content of the cultural thing that's going on. What's happened is winners and losers have been sorted. Maybe it's not meritocratic at all. It doesn't matter. And we've been sorted by a sort of a stubborn individualism, an inability to work together, and that's killing us,
Yeah, I mean, look at how the distant right, streaming podcasts here. We can't work together for very long. It always cracks up. As opposed, well, I don't pay much attention to the left, but I got to think that people on the left, there are a whole lot of them who are working together far more effectively. And so we are recreating, rejection and alienation, like even when we're trying to build something, because we are just wired to split apart. And we've got stories for it that, well, I'm a heroic truth teller. I'm just not willing to make the compromises that these other, losers, and so
there is that.
Something going on there, I think.
Well, I misunderstood what you said, but I think there is something too that we're over here and we are more honest, and that's because maybe it's because we're losers and we don't have anything to that to risk. So we go ahead and do these things which you say, and I agree, are kind of damaging to our lives. And at the very least, I'm wasting my time here.
Here's another thing that I think is going on, and I got this when I was interviewing Andy Nowicki. And I've taken an increasingly anti-conspiracist mindset. So, but anyway, one thing that struck me from talking to Andy Nowicki that I think is prevalent in the distant right sphere is that we have to cope. One of our favorite copes is, well, at least I didn't fall for the BS man. Those people are earning six figures. Those people who are happily married with kids. Those people who have a position in polite society. Well, they are mouthing the slogans of the people who dominate our society and are on the left and wrecking. Well, at least I see through the BS man, and I think that's like one of the most powerful copes for those of us in the distant right, is that we're so assured that we see through the BS, that we're the truth tellers, that we're the last honest man, so to speak, and hundreds of years from now, people will build statues to us.
Maybe, but. This all sounds very good, but I wonder if the other side individually they aren't afflicted by the same things, but other things hold them together. Being on the side of power tends to hold them together, because you said they're all working together out there, but there are so many fissures, right? I mean, we keep talking about it, how the contradictions are going to eventually bring them down, and you can see them. I mean, there's no real affinity between the average black person in America and the trans movement, really. Here's
another thought I've had recently, and let me just bounce it off you. If you're living in a relatively prosperous, relatively free compared to other countries on Earth, relatively safe country like the United States, it's generally maladaptive to have too intense of an in-group identity. Like if you're living, like LA. Okay, LA is, I think, a majority of people who don't speak English. They're incredibly diverse, and so a lot of traits are quite valuable at a 2 or a 3 or a 4 in intensity level, such as in-group identity. But if you walk around with let's say you have an in-group identity operating at an 8 out of 10, right? And you go to work and you basically have no interest, aside from the purely pragmatic, in anyone outside your in-group. That's not an adaptive strategy. So I think like an in-group identity just off the top of my head, like a 3 out of 10. And with any in-group identity comes a sense of victimization. Like you can't have an in-group identity as a Jew, as a homosexual, as a Japanese American, as a black, gay, WASP, Protestant, Catholic, Muslim. Any in-group identity is always accompanied by a sense of victimization because you remember all the horrible things that have been done to your in-group. But I'm thinking in a relatively prosperous, relatively safe place like the United States, if you're living in a city that is super multiculti, it just seems like a maladaptive strategy to have too intense of an in-group identity. I just don't know how you would thrive in the workplace, and thrive on public transport, thrive in a multiculti environment if you had no interest in developing friendships or being open to people outside your in-group. And so I think like having an in-group identity at like 2, 3, 4, even 5 out of 10 intensity level is probably a good thing and an adaptive thing. But once you start getting more intense than that, it's probably maladaptive in today's multiculti America. Like how would someone with a 9 out of 10 intensity in-group, like whether they're black, gay, Muslim, whatever, how would they really thrive in a multiculti state if they just had that lack of interest in anyone outside their in-group? Any thoughts?
Well, I don't know. You have an in-group identity. I don't really have one. I'm deracinated. I mean, I come to this late, and it's frankly political. And when you talk about, it's maladaptive if I live in L.A., where I live is pretty, I mean, I have to deal with trans people all the time. I have to be cool about it. I can't, I mean, I could make a principled stand, but I would never leave the house. So, but when you're talking about racial diversity, yes, we're talking about also a fait accompli that they visited on the native white population of, L.A. and everywhere else. But, I mean, and it doesn't necessarily, an in-group identity doesn't necessarily have to do with victimization if it's homogeneous and there's no other group. There's, it seems to be a necessity really of a minority group identity, the victimization, right? I mean, when it was white America, it was more of a, I'll just quickly end with this, when it was white America, it was more frankly of a arrogance maybe, but there was no real enemy out there to demonize, right?
I'm thinking out loud. So I don't think most Americans have ever primarily identified as white. They've identified as American, which was a dominantly white country.
But it was, and then that rug kind of got pulled out from under us.
Okay, but I just don't think it's possible. I just think it's a fact of like gravity.
You're right.
The stronger your in-group identity, the stronger your sense of victimization. I don't know how you can have any national identity, Australian, New Zealand, Indian, Japanese, Chinese, any national or in-group identity without an accompanying sense of victimization. Like, paint me a picture of someone with an intense in-group identity who's normative, who doesn't simultaneously have an intense sense of victimization and also an intense negative outlook on outgroups. I don't know how any meaningful number of people can have an intense in-group identity and not have really strong negative feelings about outgroups. I just don't think it works that way.
Yeah, but it's trouble for any group if you're the ones who are the least in-group identified, right? And that's kind of what we are in America. It's kind of official policy that there's this one group, the white, former white, non-Jewish white majority, which is shrinking, for whom it's considered, just the worst thing in the world. And for everybody else, it's encouraged. Yeah, no, I mean...
But white was never a primary American identity. I mean...
It was,
American
implicit.
Identified as American. Maybe it was implicit, it was taken for granted, but how many people wrote about how proud I am as a white man? Like, that's not normative American speech.
Right. Well, yeah.
People thought of themselves as American, and then they thought of American for many years as white. but there's very little talk comparatively, to the best of my knowledge. But like England, France, Germany, no one thinks,
Right.
almost no one thinks of themselves as white. They think of themselves as French, as Australian, as German, as Dutch,
Right.
right? And you hate other white people. Like, the Nazis killed 6 million white people. in the
Yeah, we
Holocaust.
forget.
Like,
Well,
we
and
all, like Australians hate New Zealanders.
they're still at it over Ukraine, the Poles want to get in there, and I think there is still this fear of Russia behind Germany doing what I think otherwise is crazy policy. But anyway, yeah. We used to have identities, right? I mean, my family were early adopters of deracination, but my mother, God bless her, was Catholic and tried to keep us in the faith. And I can vaguely remember as a young boy when it made a difference between me and it was mostly white people on my block, and the difference, we were like the only Catholic family. And I vaguely remember when I was little that it meant something, but that was like the last I remember it ever meaning something in my life. You know what I mean? And my process was really kind of shamefully about just leaving that behind. Like I instantly lapsed out of Catholicism and didn't look back.
But I mean, is it really shameful? Like, let's say you become a doctor. That would be your primary in-group identity. You'd feel more in common with doctors in France and Holland than with fellow Americans. And I don't see that that's necessarily a bad thing.
Well, that should be a limited thing. That's a profession, right? It's not a...
But professions for many people become their primary identity. Like men, in particular, get much of their meaning in life from their
Definitely,
profession.
Yeah.
Like, let's say that you established a six-figure professional income as a writer. That would be your overwhelming in-group identity. And you would enjoy hanging out with other, well-paid writers, whether they were from Japan or Holland or Germany, and you wouldn't really be that much interested in hanging out with people who weren't writers. I mean, I spent much of my life just hanging out with writers.
Really?
Like, that was absolutely intoxicating to me. From 2002 to 2007, my social life, 90% of it was just hanging out with writers. And if I could have sustained that, I would not have shifted from that. I mean, that was just fantastic.
Were they good company?
Yeah, writers are so smart. They're such great company. It was wonderful. It was intoxicating. So
yeah.
So I mean, I think there are many, wonderful forms of in-group identity. It doesn't have to just be religion or ethnicity. It can also be profession or hobbies. Like if you love fine art photography. Like let's say you devote, most of your spare time to fine art photography. As an in-group identity, I think that could be very fulfilling.
Yeah, but it's not complete. There needs to be a base. You have one,
Well, yeah, I mean the Jewish thing is big, but the base needs to be family. Like you should be getting your primary meaning in life from your wife and your kids, your spouse and your kids. And if that isn't there, then it's kind of evolutionarily speaking, you're a freak. I mean, you would think that most people should get their primary meaning in life from family, extended family, and then if there's room after that for friends and for hobbies.
Yes. So what do you think about so many kids seem to not even consider having, so many young people now don't even consider having kids, it seems like. It's just...
My bias is always to look for the rational explanations for why people choose what they do. So I expect most of it just comes from rational reaction to incentives that kids have just become very expensive compared to living on a farm where the kids were an asset. So I think much of it's just a rational reaction. And then I think we have become more separated, pulled apart. We don't have as much in
Yeah.
common, and so genuine freedom of association has been significantly diminished in this country since the 1960s, and so that makes it harder for people to bond and to build families. And so I think like all the litigation and civil rights legislation and all that, I think has been an absolute disaster for happiness and for sane family formation.
Birth control, abortion. Yeah. And you,
Birth control, I mean, I don't have any strong opinion about birth control. I don't have a strong feeling about abortion. I do have a very strong feeling about freedom of association. I mean, that really kills me. That I think black people should deserve their own neighborhoods. If they want their own neighborhoods, they should be able to have their own businesses where they only hire black people. The gays should be able to start businesses where they only hire gay people. Jews should be able to only hire Jews. Protestants should only hire a Protestant if they want. Like, we should have genuine community. Like, it's such a relief for me to be around people with whom I don't have to explain anything.
right.
To step
It's
into an
understood.
Orthodox shul where it's understood. You can be as bigoted as you want to be, within what's socially acceptable within, Orthodox Judaism. It's just like, it's so fantastic that I wish that for everyone. Like, I wish that for every single group, that you should have safe spaces to be as bigoted.
Right.
Because this is the other thing that struck me recently. I've been around some really intelligent, wonderful, gracious left-wing people, and I noted how even they have this tremendously human need to dismiss vast swaths of humanity as rubbish. Like, I think it's just written into how human beings operate that the complexity of people is just too much to deal with.
Yes.
And so we just automatically wired to dismiss most of humanity. So when I grew up in Australia, anyone who wasn't Australian was trash. When I live in Los Angeles, we may think of everyone who lives east of Robertson Boulevard as trash. But even left-wing people, like the most liberal left-wing, non-racist people, they still are susceptible to that human need to dismiss vast swaths of humanity as absolute rubbish. So traditionally inclined people may do it on the basis of religion and ethnicity. Other people on the basis of class and geography, but like humanity is just way too complicated for us. We're just kind of wired to dismiss everyone who's different, and we can take breaks for that at times if we're lucky and we're blessed. But I think everyone's just better off having safe space, just be with who they want to be with, and then be bigoted in your in-group there about all the losers outside of your in-group. I just think that's how we're wired.
Yeah. I don't know. Are you ever in a group where it's like you're among white people? And I mean, because they've taken that away from white people. We have no haven. So even in your indie group, like you go to shul, the guy could be a stranger to you. You've never seen him before, but all those things that are understood, and like you said, and things that were supposedly bigoted or whatever, are understood, within reason. There's nothing like that for the random white person in America.
I know almost nobody who white people who just enjoy hanging out with white people. I mean, you'd want to hang out with, white people who have, a certain set of values or, things that you have in common. Like, first of all, if you've got a 120 IQ, you literally can't hang out with someone below a 95 IQ. It will just drive you nuts.
I've done it. You can.
It's
taxing, but yeah.
Who would do that voluntarily? It's an awful experience. So I mean, you really can only.
But here's what's happening in America.
IQ.
Yeah, I think though with those high IQ people who are good liberals, good people, they get together, but they're confronted with things that, come on, that we know are outrageous. BLM, the trans movement, these things are objectively insane, and they're over there on the right side of things, supposed to accept it. And I'm thinking that these things are hitting them, and those poor bastards can't speak honestly among themselves about their doubts. And I don't think you can be that intelligent and not have some doubts, right?
But nobody can speak honestly. You think you can speak honestly in Orthodox Judaism about doubts about the fundamentals of Orthodox Judaism? Nobody can speak honestly about their doubts and their inquiry.
Well,
Like any tie, like to the extent that you and I have a tie, we are blinded by that. You can't have ties. You can't be bound to people. You can't be part of an in-group without being blind. And
well, no, your
you can't
ties.
be part of an in-group without having all sorts of things that you can't, publicly question.
Well, that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
that's
You
just the
say
nature of human organization.
that's the thing. That's what's wrong with what's happening now, though. At least like in Orthodox Judaism, you can't criticize too much Orthodox Judaism. So for these poor bastards, these good people making good money with families, that's their Orthodox Judaism. The whole fucking, the whole bundle of bullshit that we call woke, whatever, trans movement, BLM, etc.
But isn't any more BS than many of the things that we believe in? Like, we all have a hero system. Like, I'm
Sure.
not down with Black Lives Matter. I'm not down with the trans movement. But I am, keenly aware of my own BS. I believe, all sorts of just completely irrational, nonsensical things, like particularly about my own abilities and powers that are just, radically and directly not there. So, I mean, I can't get.
You can do anything.
I can't get on my high horse about other people, having a hero system. We're all sustained by things that are irrational and delusional. So, how am I just can't get on my high horse against other people who have their own irrationalities and delusions.
Well, we live under a time when there's a dispensation. The powerful is akin to a religion. And I want to look to the prophets who are saying that it's full of shit. We need an Isaiah to reprimand this whole system. That's what we need.
And there's never been a time when we haven't lived under dispensation. There have always been obvious truths that you could not say out loud.
And we got the wrong one. I'm not arguing against that. I'm saying we've got a bad one. We've lost our way, And if I knew some good Old Testament scripture, I'd quote it. But do you like where things are going, Luke? I mean, do you ever stop and think about that? I mean,
I stop and think about it all the time. But number one, I think there's just way too many variables to be too certain. Like, I see bad trends and I see good trends. I voted for George W. Bush twice. I've been wrong on so many different things. I can't get myself too worked up about other people who are wrong on the internet.
It's all right to be wrong.
When I think about how wrong that I've been, wrong last week, I just can't get exercised by other people who are wrong. So I think there are negative trends in America, and but there are positive.
What are the positives right now?
That we can have this conversation. Remember, I don't know, do you remember 2019, the sense of doom that we could no longer have these type of conversations online?
We thought it was all going to get shut down. Yeah,
we thought it was all, well, it didn't happen. In fact, there are more opportunities now than 2019 and 2020 because of things like Rumble and Odyssey. So in many ways, there's been a substantial expansion in our ability to have these conversations. I think that's a good thing. Like, blockchain technology, has enabled live streaming, free of corporate censorship, which I think is fantastic. What are other things? Technology that reduces crime. So you've got technology that can hear gunshots, send police. So what's so awful about our crime surge is that we steadily are improving in technology that should naturally be reducing murders by about 3% a year. So we're improving in crime fighting technology. We're improving in medical technology. What are so I think anything
Twitter.
that's unsustainable will not sustain itself. So I don't think the trans movement is sustainable, and I think there's a pretty substantial backlash. For the first time, it seems to me, the people on the right are not losing the culture war.
Yeah,
They're losing it
maybe.
in some ways, but there's like a substantial blowback. Whenever I hear the term woke, 95% of the time, out in the world, not in right-wing spheres, out in the world, it's used as a derogatory term.
Really.
Like there is a substantial backlash against woke. I'm talking among gay, black, Latino, they don't have a lot of positive regard for woke. There's an HBO show called Industry about bankers, and many of the really gay show, like really non-white show, but consistently the black gay characters are the most fascist, friendly,
Yeah.
just kind of hilarious. But anything that can't sustain itself won't, and
Yes.
so I think there's a substantial backlash going against woke for the first time in my lifetime. There's a chance that Republicans will turn the tide, and the conservatives will turn the tide in the culture wars, which I think is fantastic. I mean, I think Ron DeSantis seems to have been a very effective Republican governor of Florida. So you have a Republican chief executive who seems to be quite competent, as opposed to Donald Trump, who's not particularly competent as a chief executive. I think that's a great development. And like I've got to travel, so I walked around Sydney. It's supposedly the fourth safest city in the world. There's virtually no crime in Sydney. You could leave your computer, laptop on the beach, go for a swim, come back an hour later, it's still there. And Sydney's a very diverse city. It doesn't have certain types of diversity in high numbers, but Sydney's an incredibly diverse city that's incredibly safe. The utter absence of the feeling of menace during my last 3 months in Australia, I mean, that was heartening. For all Australia's problems, there was just no sense of menace that I experienced, that I saw during my time there. I see LA pushing back against the homeless problem. Like people on the left don't like rising crime rates. People on the left don't like homelessness, and so they're trying all sorts of different things. And in my 3 months away, I saw a substantial improvement in LA's homeless problem. And so I think, I think there are good things going on as well as that.
Twitter, right?
Yeah, Twitter. Yeah, I didn't
encouraged
even
by that. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to think how impactful it is. I mean, without that one platform, there would be a lot less you could say. I mean,
I've had no problem saying anything I want on Rumble.
Really?
Yeah.
I wish
that's amazing.
I wish that would take off. I wish Rumble or one of these other things would take off.
Well, I consistently get more views to my videos, both live and recorded on Rumble than I do on YouTube.
I'll have to try it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll consistently get 24 hours after I post a video on Rumble, I will consistently have 2 to 3 times. Well, sometimes, half the time I'll have 2 to 3 times as many views on Rumble as I do on YouTube.
Still doing streams? Still?
Yeah, only when I want. I don't do it as a compulsion. Like I'll take a week off when I've got something to say. I don't want to repeat things that are said by 1,000 other people. So when I feel like I have something to say, so I guess one thing that I'm on is I just find right-wing punditry and right-wing thought is just so stupid and
Really?
gay. Yeah. So it's not that I become left. It's just that I just find from Fox News to Tucker Carlson to right-wing talk, I just find it so stupid and moronic that will get me exercised enough to want to do a live stream about how stupid it is. So, I mean, I think you have to take a basis of wisdom is that different groups have different gifts, and if you don't accept such a a basic axiom, you end up just in the most idiotic places. And the conservative mainstream does not accept that different people have different gifts, and so their commentary on current events just tends to be really moronic. Like, I think, with regard to COVID, I think the conservatives and the right were really awful.
Really?
I think that the people who were in charge during COVID did the best they could. They made some
Really?
mistakes, but overall, I thought we did a pretty damn good job. I think our elites did a pretty damn good job. So I think conservatives were awful with regard to COVID. I think their attempts to establish the case for voter fraud costing Donald Trump the 2020 election were just pathetic. They were awful.
Right. Well,
Like,
Trump's
I'm
efforts
open to
were.
someone making that case, but every attempt to do so was just piss poor.
Yeah.
And I'd say to the ones who are making it when I'd have debates, if you could make this case, you'd go down as a hero of the American Republic. You'd earn millions of dollars a year. You could sleep with an unlimited number of gorgeous women. Like, it's so if you could simply make the case.
If they didn't kill you.
That rationally no one's going to kill you.
I'm kidding.
You could make a rational empirical case that the voter fraud cost Donald Trump the 2020 election. You would be a hero of the Republic.
well.
Your life would be set. But none of them can bother, like, rationally and empirically building a case. And every time they attempt to do so, I'm just so disgusted by the 50 different holes in it that so I guess I get ticked off at the very low quality of a lot of right wing thought and commentary, and so I talk about how stupid it is a lot.
Still out to make friends, are you?
Yeah, I'm still out to make friends.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
all right.
I'd rather say like, I guess I may share this with you. Yeah, in the final analysis, I'd rather say what I believe to be true. And,
Yes.
Sacrifice almost everything for that.
For all your
And I
talk.
think,
There is something to be said for us over here having a bit of honesty, especially for you personally, though. I think you've always been, I've seen that in you, is that you want to get at the truth, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I just can't stand having to say.
I find what I don't like about right-wing commentary, here on YouTube at least, is that it's all just repetition. I mean, God bless Matt Walsh for what he's doing over there, but do I need to be told this again? Tucker Carlson, what's happening with him is of incredible importance because because I think it does involve powerful people getting someone fired, but I don't really watch him that much. Never did. I used to watch clips here and there. He's not telling me anything I don't know already.
No.
We're repeating ourselves over and over again, and that's
the only
driving me
people who are
crazy.
going to tell you something you don't know basically are professors who are overwhelmingly on the left. But pundits are never going to tell you anything you don't know. They're just prostitutes serving an audience, telling the audience what it wants to hear. And the whole methodology of right-wing talk radio and right-wing punditry is basically, you're a victim and I'm fighting for you against the elites who are oppressing you, and join my Patreon and buy my Patriot powder. And, it's
I hate that.
The left has some really good critiques. There's this left-winger, Rick Polstein. He just did a great article in 2012 about the conservative con. Like, you'll notice that virtually all right-wing media is largely funded by supplement shilling, which is
Are they?
not particularly legitimate.
Is it
And
not?
it goes back, 50 years. Like, the conservative movement is largely funded by shilling, highly dubious supplements, and it's been that way for 50 years. Like, it's
Yeah.
pathetic.
Oh,
And,
there's
I'm speaking to you from the Pain Factor, the Pain-Free Factor Relief Studio.
yeah. There's a thing they were selling on it. It's gone now, I think, but it was, these guys had got purchased ads on all of these little YouTube right-wing channels, and it was, you've probably seen this, you supposedly buy yourself a lordship in Scotland, and they claim to be selling you like a little yard of dirt, but they're not even doing that. They send you a certificate, and you're a lord. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's depressing how moronic the the intellectual caliber of right wing discourse is, how moronic the funding for
Well,
right wing discourse is, and I'm still right wing, but I still largely agree with many of their tendencies, but the reasoning and the sophistry of it's just disgusting.
well, there's still good pundits out there on the right, right?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think Steve Sailer. I kind of think I have no objection to anything Steve Sailer's said. Charles Murray on genetics as opposed to politics. I think Charles Murray is often great. Richard Hanania. Christopher Caldwell, The Age of Entitled.
that book
Wow.
is wonderful. Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Like I will buy a subscription to any place that publishes Christopher Caldwell. Like I regularly subscribe to publications just to read a Christopher Caldwell column.
yeah. Well,
I gotta run. It's great talking to you. Listen to this
oh,
again.
how dare you? All right, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, Brad. Good to see you. See you.
Right on. I think he saw that dumb look on my face when I was drawing a blank and I was trying to think of something to say, and then on the moment he said, "I gotta run." Don't work with pros, man. They'll hard out on you every time. All right, that was Luke Ford. I did not debate Luke on a lot of points there that I don't agree with. Rather just let people talk, say their piece. He's a good man. I owe him an awful lot. Anyway, thank you, Luke. Next time we'll try to get KMG. Get that old curmudgeon, the other half of the duo. We'll pretend that Luke dished on him and say, "You're going to come in and respond? Are you going to let that stand? These charges?" Yeah. We're a perfect 10. We're going to stop on that. All right. Yeah, I'm going to shut her down and go make dinner. All right, that was okay. The show kind of turned into an interview, but that's good. I want people to come in here. If you know anybody who wants to come in here and chat, let them know. All right. Because we did the liftoff intro, we have to do the splashdown outro. If it's in here. Happy landings. All right. Thank you.